Any of us who've sat down to write a journal, let alone the great American novel, know that the best place to craft our thoughts is in the lovely environs of a majestic home. Indeed, America's greatest authors embodied that fact, choosing to reside in architectural masterpieces that reflected their unique artistic visions and personal sensibilities. From sun-drenched colonial mansions where cocktails flowed as freely as conversation, to brooding Victorian edifices with secret writing nooks, these homes became more than mere shelters. They transformed into creative crucibles where American literature was born. In fact, these literary landmarks still stand today, offering us intimate glimpses into the private worlds of genius. Each house tells its own story through architectural details, personal artifacts, and carefully preserved writing spaces where some of our most treasured novels and poems first sparked to life. In today's episode of Old Money Mansions, we'll give you an exclusive tour of 5 extraordinary homes where American literature found its voice. Literary giants at home, the Hemingway House, Key West's crown jewel of American literary history. The Spanish Colonial Mansion at 907. Whitehead Street in Key West doesn't whisper of its history, it practically shouts it from its wraparound verandas. This is where Ernest Hemingway, master of the lean sentence, lived rather luxuriously from 1931 to 1939, producing some of his most muscular prose while surrounded by tropical splendor. Built in 1851, during Key West's golden age as a bustling port town, the 2-story home radiates the grandeur of an era when shipwreck, salvaging, sponge harvesting, and cigar rolling brought fortune seekers to these shores. The house rises from native limestone, its walls hewn from the very bedrock of the island, a fitting metaphor for Hemingway's own grounded prose style. Tall windows beckon the Caribbean breeze, while deep eaves shield the interior from the fierce, subtropical sun. When Hemingway first dropped anchor in Key West in 1928, he discovered an island in flux. The maritime industries that built the city were giving way to the first stirrings of tourism, yet the streets still hummed with the languages of Cuban and Bahamian immigrants. This vibrant cultural mosaic would later weave its way into his stories, lending them the authentic flavor of island life. The rooms of the Whitehead Street house flow from one to another with an easy grace that would have pleased Papa Hemingway's eye for architectural harmony. During the sweltering Florida summers, these high-ceilinged spaces offered welcome relief from the heat, though one suspects the ice-cold daiquiris helped too. The home's expansive layout and lush gardens provided the perfect backdrop for both serious writing and legendary parties. As the Great Depression cast its shadow across America in the 1930s, Key West was reinventing itself. The presence of Hemingway and other creative spirits transformed the island into an artistic haven, setting the stage for its future as a bohemian paradise. Above the carriage house, Hemingway created his private eyrie, a writing studio where he crafted The Snows of Kilimanjaro and The Short Happy Life of Francis Macumber. We can almost picture him there at dawn, pencils sharpened, blank pages waiting, while the roosters of Key West announce the morning. The crown jewel of the property is its spectacular 60-foot swimming pool, which in 1938 cost an astronomical $20,000, equivalent to over $400,000 today. In fact, the pool was such a financial feat that Hemingway, with his characteristic flair for dramatic gesture, pressed his last penny into the wet cement of the pool patio, telling his wife, Pauline, "You've spent all but my last penny, so you might as well have that." The grounds themselves form a verdant sanctuary, populated by the descendants of Hemingway's famous six-toed cats. These distinguished felines, now 40 to 50 strong, lounge regally on antique furniture and patrol the garden paths like tiny lions in their own private Serengeti. The Hemingways transformed what was once a neglected property into a showcase home, filling it with European antiques from their travels and adding sophisticated touches that elevated the space from mere house to literary landmark. Here Hemingway began For Whom the Bell Tolls and wrote To Have and Have Not, drawing inspiration from the colourful characters of Key West. While Hemingway chose the sultry warmth of the Florida Keys for his creative haven, his contemporary F. Scott Fitzgerald opted for the graceful refinement of the Midwest. Next on our list, at 599 Summit Avenue in St. Paul, Minnesota, is a brownstone row house that holds the echoes of literary genius within its Victorian walls. This is where F. Scott Fitzgerald, the chronicler of the Jazz Age, found his voice in the summer of 1919, furiously rewriting the manuscript that would become This Side of Paradise in a third-floor room overlooking the street's elm-lined grandeur. The 1889 structure, designed by architects William H. Wilcox and Clarence H. Johnston Sr., embodies what architectural critics call the New York style of row houses. But this particular home plays every Victorian design note with theatrical flourish. A rich brownstone facade stretches 2 bays wide, featuring a polygonal 2-story window bay on one side and an entrance tucked beneath a round arch on the other. Above, a mansard roof crowned with a cross gable displays twin round arch windows and decorative finials that reach toward the Minnesota sky. The young Fitzgerald returned here in 1918, moving in with his parents Edward and Molly after his military service. Depression dogged his steps, but the third-floor room, now a modest sewing space, became his creative sanctuary. Between these walls, he not only reshaped his debut novel, but also crafted short stories that would help launch his meteoric literary career. Ironically, Fitzgerald maintained a love-hate relationship with Summit Avenue, once dismissing it as a mausoleum of American architectural monstrosities. Yet this supposedly monstrous street provided the perfect observation post for a writer whose keen eye would later dissect the manners and morals of America's upper crust. His complicated feelings toward his hometown and upbringing would later infuse his work with an insider's understanding of social ambition and the price it extracts. The house stands as part of the historic Hill District, recognized in 1976, and achieved National Historic Landmark status in 1971. While not open for public tours, its exterior continues to draw literary pilgrims who stand on the sidewalk, imagining the young writer at his desk above, wrestling with manuscripts that would define the Roaring Twenties. Despite Fitzgerald's ambivalent relationship with his childhood home, 599 Summit Avenue played midwife to his earliest literary successes. Here, beneath the ornate Victorian flourishes he claimed to disdain, he found the quiet and stability needed to transform himself from a failed advertising copywriter into the voice of his generation. While Fitzgerald's house represents the aspirational world of the early 20th century, another American literary giant chose to build his dream home from the ground up. In Hartford, Connecticut, Mark Twain created an architectural fantasia that matched his outsized personality, a 25-room Victorian mansion where every detail reflects its creator's boundless imagination. When Mark Twain decided to build his dream house in Hartford, Connecticut, he didn't just commission a home, he created a literary landmark that would make P.T. Barnum's mansion look understated. The 25-room Victorian Gothic spectacle at 351 Farmington Avenue became the stage where Samuel Clemens, America's greatest humorist, would craft his masterpieces from 1874 to 1891. architects Edward Tuckerman Potter and Alfred H. Thorpe designed what might be called American High Gothic with a wink. The 11,500 square foot mansion flaunts its personality through dramatic polychrome brickwork, where patterns of black and vermilion play across the facade like a Victorian's idea of jazz. The asymmetrical roofline, with its dance of massive and minor gables crowned by an octagonal tower, seems to mirror its owner's fondness for the theatrical. Inside, Louis Comfort Tiffany's firm, Associated Artists, created interiors that would have made a Maharaja feel at home. Fresh from decorating the White House for President Chester Arthur, they transformed Twain's rooms into a global design adventure. Moroccan patterns swirl across the walls, Indian motifs adorn the woodwork, and hints of Japan, China, and Turkey create an exotic atmosphere that must have fueled Twain's imagination. The heart of this literary laboratory was the third-floor billiard room, where Twain retreated to write. Here, surrounded by the gentle click of billiard balls and wreathed in cigar smoke, he penned The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, The Prince and the Pauper, and A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. The room still houses his writing desk and billiard table, silent witnesses to the creation of American classics. The house was as innovative as its owner's prose. It boasted cutting-edge technology like early telephones and flush toilets, while the glass-enclosed conservatory provided a jungle-like retreat from Hartford's winters. Today, the restored mansion holds over 50,000 artifacts, including manuscripts, historic photographs, and the family's ornate Venetian bed, which looks like something from a fairy tale. A meticulous renovation in 1999 returned the house to its 1880s glory days, when the Clemens family was at its happiest. Every purple slate roof tile, every terracotta brick, every stenciled wall pattern was carefully restored, allowing modern visitors to step into Twain's world exactly as he knew it. While Twain built a mansion that proclaimed its presence to the world, another American literary giant chose a far different path. In Amherst, Massachusetts, Emily Dickinson found her inspiration in a more modest family home, where she would compose nearly 1,800 poems in quiet seclusion. The yellow brick house on Main Street may lack Twain's architectural flourishes, but it harbors its own profound literary magic. Two historic houses in Amherst, Massachusetts hold the secrets of America's most enigmatic poet. The Dickinson homestead, a federal-style brick dwelling built in 1813, stands as the creative crucible where Emily Dickinson crafted nearly 1,800 poems that would revolutionize American literature. Next door, the Evergreens offers a Victorian counterpoint, completing the picture of the world that shaped her distinctive voice. The heart of the museum is Dickinson's bedroom in the homestead, her private universe where she distilled vast thoughts into diamond-sharp verses. Here, at a modest writing table that still occupies its original space, she penned lines that would puzzle and delight generations of readers. The room's careful restoration, from its specific shade of wallpaper to the precise placement of furniture, allows visitors to stand where genius bloomed in self-imposed seclusion. Just outside her bedroom, the reconstructed conservatory reveals another facet of Dickinson's character. This glass-enclosed space once housed her beloved plants, combining her passions for botany and poetry. Here, she tended exotic blooms that would later flower in her verses, their delicate forms transformed by her unique perspective into metaphors for life, death, and immortality. The homestead's recent restoration has tripled the accessible space, offering visitors an unprecedented glimpse into Dickinson's daily life. Every element, from paint colors to decorative details, has been researched with scholarly precision. The result is not just a museum, but a time machine, transporting guests to the poet's era with remarkable authenticity. A few steps away, the Evergreens presents a different story. Built in 1856 for Emily's brother Austin and his wife Susan, this Italianate villa remains virtually unchanged since the 1890s. Its rooms, still furnished with original pieces, artwork, and family belongings, paint a vivid picture of Victorian domestic life in New England. Here, visitors can explore the social world that Emily observed largely from a distance, understanding both her connection to and removal from conventional society. Together, these two houses create a powerful dialogue about creativity, family, and isolation in 19th century America. While the homestead speaks to Dickinson's intense private world, the Evergreens illuminates the broader social context that she both embraced and rejected in her revolutionary work. While Dickinson found her inspiration in the confined spaces of a New England home, William Faulkner created his fictional universe in the expansive grounds of a Mississippi plantation. Rowan Oak, his beloved estate in Oxford, stands as a monument to Southern literary tradition, where moss-draped oaks shade the walkway to a Greek revival mansion that became his sanctuary for over 3 decades. In Oxford, Mississippi, a Greek revival mansion rises from 29 acres of southern splendor, its white columns standing like sentinels guarding literary history. This is Rowan Oak, where William Faulkner crafted his complex tales of Yoknapatawpha County from 1930 until his death in 1962. The estate, built in 1844 by Irish immigrant Colonel Robert Shegog, combines 4 acres of manicured gardens with 25 acres of pristine woodland known as Bailey Woods. The heart of this literary laboratory is Faulkner's study, added around 1950, where the walls still tell stories of their own. The most striking feature is the author's handwritten outline for a fable, sketched directly onto the walls in graphite and red grease pencil, a technique borrowed from his Hollywood screenwriting days. It's as if the very room itself became an extension of his creative mind. In the library, Faulkner's intellectual world comes alive through his extensive book collection, while paintings by his mother, Maud Butler Faulkner, add personal touches, including a haunting still life above the mantel. The room breathes both scholarship and family history, revealing the dual nature of Faulkner's life as both literary giant and Southern gentleman. Outside, a magnificent avenue of cedars leads to the house, planted by previous owners who believed these trees could ward off yellow fever. The grounds, with their majestic magnolias and sweetly scented mock orange trees, became Faulkner's outdoor writing room. Here, often on horseback, he would compose stories in his head before committing them to paper. His beloved horse Tempe shared these grounds, though tragically, a riding accident would lead to complications that claimed Faulkner's life in 1962. Within these walls and under these trees, Faulkner created masterpieces like As I Lay Dying and Absalom, Absalom. The estate became what he famously called his own little postage stamp of native soil, the wellspring of his imagination. He named it Rowan Oak in 1931, combining the Scottish rowan tree, symbolizing peace, with the American live oak, representing strength, though neither species grew on the property, a perfect example of Faulkner's blend of reality and imagination. Today, Rowan Oak stands as a National Historic Landmark, owned by the University of Mississippi, inviting visitors to step into the world that shaped one of America's most innovative storytellers. From Hemingway's tropical paradise to Fitzgerald's brownstone, from Twain's Victorian fantasy to Dickinson's quiet sanctuary, and finally to Faulkner's southern estate, each of these literary homes reflects its creator's unique vision and voice. Therefore, we'd love to hear your personal opinions and taste. Which would you choose to visit first? Let us know below, for the choice is yours, but each promises a remarkable journey into the spaces where American literature was born. With that said, thanks for joining us for another episode of Old Money Luxury, and cheers until the next time.